Oh, my pleasure. So, you would like me to move back here? Kind of like this?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right.
One, technically two products,
Alexa, stop.
enzymes, and enzymes.
Or I should. Alexa, continue playing.
Injection. It's goes in for.
Alexa, stop. All right, whatever. I should have paused. Yeah. It's all right. We'll just start all over again. Or
Offending.
Oh, and I'm supposed to remind you to send the rest of my
Brownies is when you're.
oh, thanks. But now's not necessarily the best time to remind me of that.
What time do you want me to remind you?
How about when I can actually do something about it?
Sure.
So we don't. I mean, listen. We're okay for today and tomorrow. But I need to do it beyond that. I just need to get ahead of it, and I've made some changes recently, so I have to recreate them.
Like for tomorrow, if then.
A new application.
It could be next week because we don't need the material until
Day 3?
the 15th of December. I mean, we'll get it before then. You'll get it before then. All right, folks. What do you say? Should we get started again? Great. All right, so we've covered some amount of this. We're going to go through some of the slides just to kind of fill out anything that I might have missed. So really, when we talk about this stuff, the Lean and Six Sigma, it's two sides of the same coin, right? And it really is about making things better. And if you take a look at both of these together, you'll see all of this stuff, right? Eliminating waste on the Lean side, reducing variation on the Six Sigma side. Okay, you know, this is just change management there anyway, right? So some goals and ways to do things, that's some of the challenges. And really what we're trying to do is understand the waste that occurs in our processes. Usually we might go from order to cash. Sometimes if we're just focused on operations, we'll look at from the time an order comes in until the time it ships. There are different spaces that we can look at, but we're basically trying to look at all the things that occur and then removing that waste. That is the point there. So, there. So let's see here. A couple of different things. One is I just wanted to throw out a pitch for this. And in this case, this is what we've created here at CICS. This is what we call our holistic CI practitioner curriculum. And the idea is that you can pick your own personal journey out of the people, process, and technology sides of these skills. Okay, so if you look, basically it breaks down into the Lean world, the Six Sigma world, and then what we call the human side of Lean, which is all about facilitation. And so if you take a look, it's all very similar, right? I mean, it's really focused on being a practitioner or helping other people to implement these skills, right? You're not going to hear me talk much about certification exams and stuff like that because I don't really care. I know lots of people who can pass exams. I'm mentoring 3 of them right now, in fact. I'm mentoring 4 people total, but only 3 are involved in Six Sigma. 2 of them are green belts. One of them wants to be a black belt, and they benefited from this explanation, right? They're certified, and yet they didn't understand this stuff. So we just put that out there. There are all these things. We are really just working right here down the middle. Presumably, we hope in this case that you've picked up some of this, the cultural or people side of things. And some of you know more than others about the Lean stuff, but that's in here as well too. So, you know, Adam, you were talking earlier about, well, I didn't really understand the difference between Lean and Six Sigma. And what I tell folks is, to me, I see Lean and Six Sigma. And so therefore at cocktail parties, I can board people on 2 topics, not just one. Okay, they are definitely separate. So let's be clear about that. I forgot about this slide. We don't need to worry about this. This is just some of the things that we offer. And so here we talked about some of this stuff. So I just want to kind of not touch on it too hard, but Lean is looking at some of these specific things. Like for instance, if we know where scrap is coming from, great. Okay, so that's the thing. So if we know that we're having trouble with a particular process or perhaps a tool and it's causing issues, defects perhaps, then we could focus on that. But if we were to say something, or if your boss were to say something to you like, hey Manny, we need we're having a problem in this area with this one product line, and we need to make it better, but we don't know what the problem is. Six Sigma project, right? Very clear there, I think. So here are some of the tools that are used, and if you were to take a look and start checking off one versus the other, value stream mapping is exactly the same. Remember, every Six Sigma project turns into a lean project at some point, so you can see here all of this just fits into the lean tools part. So each one does different things. It's not, which one do you like? It's let's leverage the power of both of these so that we can understand root cause and use simple tools to help us maintain some of that. Yeah, some of this is yellow belt's a feeder. Let's not worry about that. Where does lean come from? This is a question, actually, that comes up a fair amount. And so lean came from the Toyota production system. You guys familiar with this? You've heard of Toyota before. Adam, you mentioned him earlier. Okay, Taiichi Ohno was considered to be the father or the founder of the Toyota production system, and he was a very smart guy. And basically, what he said was this is one of his quotes: all we're doing is looking at the timeline from the time an order comes in to the time order to cash, in this case, and then reducing the timeline by reducing the wastes. So here's a key here, folks. There's two ways to do things, and we'll talk about waste in detail in just another minute or so. But there's a couple of ways to drive productivity. One is that, for instance, we could give the supervisors bigger whips and just let them go out there and start cracking the whip, right? Hey, what are you doing? Walk faster, stop thinking, work. We could do that. We can make people work faster, but really what we prefer to do is to get rid of the waste inherent in these processes, and that's really what we're trying to do in this case. So that is a key there. Okay, so now I'm going to erase this. You guys should have all seen this already. Do we need to take a picture of it? Do we need pictures, Rosa? You know what? Can you do me a favor? You have your phone? Just every so often, just snap a picture for me, please. Especially if it looks like I'm getting ready to erase something. Okay, good. Oh, I'll try not to.
Move iPhone continuously? No.
Okay, you're in panorama mode, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. It's all right.
Oh, Jesus, would you do this, please?
Okay, so
I can't see.
so some of it's like a technology challenge too.
I just went to the eye doctor last week, haven't gotten my new glasses. It's bad.
Okay, thank you.
Is that slide 3 or 8 or 6? Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Help me keep track of some of this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about waste, shall we? I think this is relatively important here, because I'm going to understand now how lean works, because it really is a very fundamental piece of everything that we're going to be doing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about lean, shall we? So when we talk about lean, there's two things that we need to talk about. One is this idea of value added, and then non-value added activities. So what does that actually mean? Well, a value added activity, I mean, you can read the definitions here, right? If you change the form, fit, or function of material or information at the request of the customer at the desired quality and production rates, that's considered to be a value added activity. Now, most people can't remember that long definition, so what we say is something the customer must be willing to pay for. Okay, so if you think about it, let's just say that we weren't going to go to our favorite local pizza place for lunch today. Let's say that we were, going to visit the clown with the golden arches, let's just say. And so if you think about, what do customers value there? Well, you can't get a build your own burger kit, right? So we want the clown to actually assemble the 2-off beef patties, the special sauce, the lettuce, cheese, the pickles, and whatnot into a burger, right? So a value-added activity is something that the customer is willing to pay for. Now, the customer pays for all of our mistakes. They pay for all of our delays, all of our errors. However, willing to pay for it. And in fact, if you want to think about a value-added activity, it's really something that you could charge the customer for. You know, like, hey, we took raw material and then converted it at the request of the customer. Yeah, they're willing to pay for that. But think about yourselves. What if you were to go visit the clown because you just got to have a taste of one of those Big Macs? And so you go, and before you can even place your order, the person at the counter says, hey, you know what? The cook just dropped a tray of patties in the back. We had to throw out the meat, of course. And now we're going to charge everybody that comes through the door for the next hour an extra quarter, an extra 25 cents to cover the cost of the meat that we had to throw out. Now, what would you say? Oh, I worked in there. It's slippery back there. It's a mess. Sure, no problem. Here, take 50 cents, right? You wouldn't do that. You don't care how much it is. That's their problem, not yours. Okay? And so that's the idea. That would be a non-value added activity. Don't make me pay for, you know, your clumsy cook, right? And customers say the same thing. You know, could you say, hey, driver spent 20 minutes looking for material for the order. Could you put that in on an invoice? Probably not, right? Not unless the customer actually wanted it. In that case, then we would consider it to be non-value additive. The customer pays for it, but if you can't properly charge for it as a line item, then it's probably a waste, right? So you guys see that? And that's really what we're doing is we're focusing in on waste here. Now, another thing that we should talk about is this idea of symptoms, and we'll come back to this, but all of these wastes that we're talking about are symptoms of an underlying problem. Now, the way I remember these wastes, with the help of my friend TIMPWOOD here. And so if we take a look at this stuff, let's see. Let's go with this. So the T stands for transportation, moving things around from one place to the next. Now, it's required, right? All of you have drivers in your organizations. You all have seen them before. So why would I call transportation a waste? It's necessary, right? Why is it a waste? It's not necessary necessarily. Okay. Boy, I may need more coffee for that. Exactly right. We're not actually changing the material. You know, we're in fact adding cost by using people and equipment to move it around, but we're not actually converting it in the way a customer wants. Customer doesn't care if because, you know, you got no space to expand and you had to open up another operation 4 blocks or 4 miles away. They don't care. That's your problem. You know, they don't want to have to pay for the shuttle between the two. So transportation doesn't change anything other than it adds cost. Can we eliminate it? Probably not. I don't know how to do that. But what we can do is recognize it as a waste and work to reduce it as much as possible.
Well, the software companies have done it by doing cloud-based stuff, if you think about it. We used to have to go to the store to buy everything.
You're right about that. There are some advantages, especially in technology and distribution, sure. Certainly things can be done to reduce the cost. We can make our vehicles more efficient, either in what they can hold or just in terms of, you know, whatever, miles per pound of propane used, for instance. You know, we can calculate some of that stuff and work to improve these things. And that's the idea. Wherever we can find improvements, we do it. So the I stands for inventory. Now, every financial textbook I've ever read says inventory is an asset. So why would I call it a waste? What's wrong with it?
Tax dollars, it's not bringing money in.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah, it costs money, takes up space. Were you going to add something, Sam?
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say if you have, like, there's a certain amount of inventory you want to have because you don't want to be overpaying to store the inventory you do have.
Right.
Well, not only that, you deal with damage, obsolete, expiration dates, things like that too.
Also, almost every factory I go to talks about, oh, we got too much of something in the way, and therefore my forklift driver can't see around the corner, and
Yeah,
I can't move around.
taking up real estate, sure.
We'll say that this is probably one time in history though where not being lean has saved my company in particular because of supply chain shortages. We didn't. It's not foresight or anything. It's just the way we operate. we have a ton of circuit boards and components that we purchase, and because our competitors can't get them right now, we've been eating away at their business. But that's, I think, unusual.
Yeah, it's like, congratulations, but what did that cost you? So,
We won the lottery, but we've been,
yeah, but how many tickets did you buy,
yeah,
right?
we've been paying them.
But you also got lucky in terms of the obsolescence that Rose
Yes.
mentioned that.
Yes.
Yeah, so no,
That
it's,
happens all the time too. Yeah.
well, and it's a challenge, and I know because I've, well, you were getting boards from TJM for a while, so I work with them, and yeah, there's just all sorts of challenges. Everybody's got challenges. In fact, there was a guy who went from, he was working for TJM, he started working for Beck, and now I think he's back with TJM now. I forget his name. He was like a project manager, purchaser, or something like that. Son of the owner, maybe, of the TJM. I heard about him. I didn't meet him. Anyway, he worked at Beck for a while, and now he's back with TJM. So anyway, let's talk about some more of this then. Let's continue. So inventory. Here's some problems with inventory. It costs money. It takes up space. It can go obsolete, or it can expire. It's got a shelf life. Funny thing about inventory, the more stuff you have, the more stuff you lose. You guys ever lose anything in your facility? No. Never. Good. You know, Beck's always been so nice and clean and organized. Sure. You know, in fact, no, I was going to make a joke about, yeah, somebody thought they lost something, but they were mistaken, right? So it was a mistake, but it was a different kind. No, so here's the thing. Inventory is expensive, and not just to buy, but to manage it and to count it and to care for it. So I'll never tell you how to run a facility without inventory. I don't know how to do that. I will tell you that if you can design your processes so they are efficient and effective on as little inventory as possible, you'll be better off. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Also at the level of inventory, whether it's raw materials versus finished goods, can make a difference.
Oh, sure. Well, the more value you add to it, the more expensive it is on your books. So yeah, inventory is a real challenge. The next one is motion. And how do you think motion is different than transportation? I mean, it's all movement, right? What's the difference?
Transportation is usually the good, and motion is the people doing the work.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. So motion is what people do as they're doing their jobs. And when we talk about that, we need to talk about ergonomics and safe practices, safe work practices, right? I mean, I've got two safety professionals here, so it'd be all over me if I didn't mention stuff about this. So it is important. We need to keep that in mind, okay, as we're going through and observing and doing things. And I'll tell you what, folks, you're here to learn some very specific analysis and implementation skills. The biggest one you can do is what they call an Ono circle. We'll talk about this in a minute. There's an article, in fact, in your thumb drive on Ono circles. And the idea is that Taiichi Ono used to, when he was training people in the Toyota production system, he would take them out. He would take a piece of chalk, he'd draw a circle on the floor and say, here, stand there. And they'd have to stand there in the factory and observe everything that's going on until they saw something to work on. And what he realized, and he was smart about this, was that when there are problems, you don't see them every cycle, right? For instance, let's say that we have a problem where the rack where we're storing material is in a pedestrian aisle, right? So when people are walking, the fork truck can't get in, and when the fork truck's in there, people can't walk past. Okay, so with that problem, you don't see it every time, every cycle, every piece that gets done. You see it every so often, and that's why you have to stand out there and see what's going on. And for Taiichi Ono, for Ono circles, the story goes that he would keep people out there for hours or even days, I've heard. I don't know how true this is. I don't know the man. I never did, but supposedly up to days. He'd like, okay, Rosa, so you stay here until you see something. And then he'd check back with people. Hey, you see anything yet? Nope, nothing. Okay, great. Keep looking. And he'd check back with them later on. You see anything yet? Nope, not yet. Third time. You see anything? Yes. Okay, great. And it's this realization that when things go bad, it doesn't go bad every time. It goes bad every so often. And so you need to spend the time out there to pay attention to it. And my point is that you're learning lots of skills, but one of the big ones is just doing Ono circles properly. going out there, talking to people, observing processes, and being able to measure them. That's what we're trying to do here. Now, the P stands for people. And a lot of times when you hear folks going through these 8 wastes, they talk about underutilization of people. I don't like to say that because it sounds like we're not working them hard enough, and that's not what I'm trying to do. When I think of the waste of people, I'm thinking of the waste of what's between their ears, their thoughts, their skills, and experiences. Because who knows a job better than the person who's doing it all day, every day? And yet, has it ever happened that somebody made changes that affected your ability to do the job and they never once asked you what you need or why things are a certain way? I especially love the corporate edicts, the ones that come out from the mothership and they say something like, effective immediately, we will or will not be doing something moving forward. And it's like, wait a minute, I need that thing to do my job. How am I going to do my job now without it? Right, I love it. You know, and it's like, well, just figure it out, folks. Just figure it out. Okay, that could be a challenge. So here's the thing. If we're going to make changes, we can't make changes for people or to people. We have to make changes to stick. We have to do it with people. And that means, hey, Rosa, I see you doing the job. And from what I saw, you have some challenges here. I wanted to check with you first. Is that right? What other challenges do you have that I didn't see? And we'll talk more about this because a good operator makes it look easy. So you can't just look at somebody doing a job and say, oh, well, a job must be easy because look how quickly, you know, she can do it. You have to dig deeper than that. And so the idea here is we need to engage people if we want solutions that stick. Now the W stands for waiting.
Oh, come on, that never happens.
You don't wait for anything in your job?
Never.
Oh, good. Now, how about, though, for the other folks who live in the real world, what do you guys wait for? What do you wait for?
Most often somebody else
Somebody else, yeah.
do their part.
Sure. Material, information, documentation, perhaps, right? You're waiting for things.
Approvals.
Oh, lots of things, right?
Awful.
So here's the thing. Whenever you get to waiting, right? To me, waiting, it's a mismatch of resources. I'm ready for something. It's not ready for me. But I can't very well look someone in the eye and say, you know what, Adam? You've been standing around for 10 minutes. Stop waiting. Right? You can't. It's that mismatch. Instead, we need to recognize that waiting, just like all of these wastes, is a symptom of the underlying problem. And much like smoke is a symptom of fire or a fever, having an elevated temperature is a symptom of illness. Now, what if you were to go to the doctor, right? I mean, we're getting into cold and flu season. What if you went to the doctor and said, doc, my throat hurts and I've got a cough, scratchy throat. Hey, no problem. And you got a fever? Great. Listen, I got a miracle cure for you. If the doctor said, I want you to drink plenty of ice cold water every day, it'll do 2 things for you. It'll cool you down and it'll soothe that sore throat. How would you feel about that doctor? Like, well, is the ink still dry on the diploma? Like, where'd they get it from? Right? Because they're addressing symptoms, and that's what we don't want to do. It's hard to address these very directly. Instead, what we have to do is recognize them as symptoms and then drive down to the root cause of the situation that allows or requires that waste and waiting to occur. Okay? Until we get to here, we can't really solve these effectively. So let's talk about overprocessing next. We'll do the O's in order. Overprocessing is the next one. Overprocessing is something we define as doing more than is necessary to get the job done. What do I mean by that? Well, you don't necessarily have to answer me, but you can think about it yourselves. How many signatures does it take to buy a screwdriver in your organization? How many approvals are required? 6. Ouch. Oof.
It's crazy.
That is crazy.
You're not kidding, are you?
I'm not. No, it goes in, you put it in, and then it goes
That's worse than us.
to direct supervisor, then to their supervisor, and then, and it also gets an approval from the pay department, and then it goes to Mick or whoever else is doing it.
Like our vice president.
Yeah, and then it just. there's a
Keep in mind, we have like 12 vice
have different
presidents.
paths.
Sure, you got a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gotta go.
The more
Well, you need them for
money,
the approvals.
the more approvals.
Yeah,
And
when I was in a corporate, that was the same way.
Yes.
Now I just go and ask Mark and just say, hey,
Yeah.
can you get me this off of eBay? Sure.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Right. Yeah, it's so much nicer working in places where you don't have all the approvals and whatnot. Yeah. And that adds time and it adds cost, right? I mean, we've just seen this so many times. I mean, I've been, working for what, 35 years now, and I've seen all of these I've seen over time, and I'm sure you have too, no matter how long you've been in the workforce. Overprocessing, doing more than is necessary to get the job done. This could include too many meetings, too many emails, okay? It could also include looking for things, files on a network.
What about going above and beyond the specifications?
It's like 100% inspection.
Oh, easily, sure, yeah. If that's not required, if the customer is not willing to pay for that, then why are you doing that? It could be overprocessing. Too many approvals. Meetings kill me. I hate meetings. You'll hear me talk about meetings. And you know what I tell folks? When you're in meetings, especially if you got regular ones, especially weekly sales meetings, assign everybody a cost. $20 to $50 an hour, whatever's comfortable for you. It's probably less than that actually, or it's probably more than that, but figure 20 to 50 bucks an hour. Figure out how many people are in the meeting, and then I say double it for all the things you could be doing if you weren't sitting in the meeting. So I got 5 people at $30 an hour, it's 150 bucks an hour, double it to 300 because we could be doing something more useful than talking. And that's at least what that meeting is costing, probably more than that.
Oh, can I share something?
Oh, please.
One of my old bosses used to have a sign on his door, which I loved, and I live by to this day. I've survived yet another meeting that could have been an email.
Well, that should have been an email, yeah.
When I go to plan meetings now, like for projects, I always think of that. It's like, do I really need to pull these people out of their, regular lives to do this? And basically, for my projects anyway, we don't have update meetings anymore. We just don't. It's the spreadsheet, here you go. If you've got a problem, let me know, and, we'll talk about
Yeah,
it.
I don't know how it was for you guys, but with COVID and we had to work from home for a while, the world didn't end.
Right.
No, it
kind of
didn't.
showed people that we can.
Exactly. We can do
We
this.
don't have to be sitting
Yep.
in a meeting to do this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in 2021, they made us all go back, full-time in office. And we were still holding meetings virtually
Yeah,
because
same with us.
nobody wanted to leave
Yeah.
their little space,
My issue is always not necessarily with the meeting, it's the time it takes me to refocus after a meeting. Like if I go to a meeting and then I sit back down at my desk, you can't, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you
Like
have
when
to
your
kind of
groove gets
you
ruined.
reset, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
because I check my phone and then I end up on Facebook.
That's
So then it's like 30 minutes of your day.
so weird. How's that happen?
They blocked us.
Yeah.
Oh God, we can't even do that.
But also, we talk about emails, if you have, how many extra people are copied on that email that don't really need it?
Right.
And so what happens is you either read it and waste time, or you don't read it and miss something. Oh,
Meetings can be
yeah.
valuable, it's a matter of whether you're really accomplishing some of the
And that is
tasks with
the
that,
key.
or sharing some information that really needs to be shared.
Yeah, and discuss. But I think you have to come, it's like walking into a store and buying something. You walk into a meeting, you need to come out with some kind of result or action plan or something. It's not about, well, last week we did blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Last week is done. What challenges did we have that we can address next week?
Yeah. In our manufacturing world, certainly though, whether it's the inspections, the paperwork, what else are we doing that we don't need to do in order to accomplish our tasks and still have the quality control person?
Right.
Is a quality control person and a quality assurance person making us do something too much sometimes, or because for no reason, versus what we have to do or should do.
Another problem with, at least in GMP and pharma, is that every time there's a problem, they're gonna slap another corrective action on top of it, and then it stacks up until there's so many
Yeah.
that you can't even get the job done.
She'll tell you about that, right?
Oh, good Lord. We have this part of what we do, this tube sheet, right, with lots of little holes in it, and they have to run a tube through them. And there's one that has 2008 holes in it, okay? And each row, I believe, is 100, something like that.
20 rows, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's less than that because there's more rows than that. But anyway, I digress. So we had a non-compliance where like 2 of the welds or whatever it was, some tubes were not welded in place.
Out of the 2008
Out of
places.
the 2008. So the corrective action was that instead of signing off the operator and the quality inspector on the trowel or on the job, right? They wanted individual signatures for each row. So it wasn't 2008, call it 208, right? Boom, 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 right? Which was absurd. Absurd. Do you think they were signing them as they did a row? No. They were doing the job and signing 208 times. The irony was that happened one time, probably about 8 years ago, maybe 9. Never happened again. So a year passed, fine. 2 years passed, no problem. 3 years passed, no problem. It was only, was it last year or 2021? Maybe
2019.
No, it wasn't 2020. It was 2021.
Oh, okay.
In reviewing processes, to eliminate waste, right? And this came up because we were looking at reworks that are inherent to the process, rather than stopping and processing a rework, which takes, stops the job and takes a bunch of people a bunch of time. Let's just do a supplemental traveler. If this happens, which it probably will, you do this. Don't stop. That's what you're gonna do. Great. So in doing those things, we find this one, and we're like, that was like 8 years ago. Happened one time, never happened again. And this was a corrective action. Wait for it. This is even better. That we implemented. It wasn't even required by the customer or the Navy. So it's like, what are we doing? Stupid stuff like that, man. It makes you crazy. Ugh.
But it's exactly what Adam was talking about.
exactly.
Like you did it to respond to a customer problem, and there was never any sunset provision.
And
Right.
A lot of times you don't look at the dollar amount. Like you say, that happened one time. What did that cost you? What
Over
did
the
that do
years?
What just that one time? What did that one cost you? And then what that time that somebody's spending now?
Mm-hmm.
What is that costing you? I mean,
Yeah. And in my opinion, it didn't happen, thankfully, but the fact that they were signing after the fact,
you're not checking.
you know what I mean?
No, they're pencil whipping
They're
it.
not changing anything they're doing, except that they're signing,
Then if it was that important, should there be these days we have vision systems that can check things. Are there other systems that we should have done?
Right.
If it was
You can
really that
state
important.
proof it,
Right.
Yeah.
just nuts.
Yeah, it's all very interesting, really. There's just so many opportunities. I could tell you just stories about stuff like that. People do things they think is right, and it ends up being the dumb thing to do. So it does happen.
Note to self, don't shoot yourself in the foot.
Well, sunset provisions, think about that, right? Like, okay, if we can do this for a few orders, how do we back off of it until we finally don't have any extra inspections anymore?
Yeah.
So I didn't tell you yet about my favorite form of overprocessing. I finally found what I'm looking for, right? Because I was looking for it earlier. It's on a skid in a corner surrounded by 3 other skids. So to get what I need so that other people can do their job, I have to move 3 skids out of the way. Then I have to get what I came for, pick it up, but I can't leave yet. I got to put it down, put the other 3 skids back so I can pick up this skid for the second time and take it about and do my thing. If you're lucky, it only costs you 5 or 10 minutes. If you're not lucky, it might have cost more. And that's really a waste due to not being organized. So, again, I can tell you all the horror stories with this stuff, as I'm sure you can too. Now, the second O stands for overproduction. And this, in the Toyota production system, is considered to be the worst of the 8 wastes because Taiichi Ono said that it by itself leads to all the others. Okay? Now, we define overproduction as making more, earlier, or faster than you need it. I'll say that again. That's making more, earlier, or faster than you need it. So what's wrong with that? Well, think about it. Some people say, well, man, you know what? We take shutdown every year at Christmas time. Does that mean that we can't build up ahead of time? No, of course not. In fact, in the short term, sometimes, as Brett was telling us earlier, inventory is the easiest way to get yourself out of a supply problem, right? And in fact, the rule of thumb is the longer and more variable your supply chain, the more inventory you need to have on hand to buffer against any disruptions, right? So if you're getting stuff from China, is it 30 days on the water or is it 6 weeks from order to shipment to receive? Sometimes it's more than that.
That's why I always wonder, like, when everyone's been using the term supply chain issues for like the past 3 years, I'm like, is it actually a supply chain issue? Or is it a marketing scheme to not have to pay for delivery of goods and things until it's convenient for your company? Because if it was an issue, they would have fixed it.
You think, right? It's a good point.
It's an issue.
Well, maybe for like your company, getting things, right? But for the company that's distributing the
Yeah.
things you need,
No,
They're-
even for them, like the computer chips, like they have no idea when they're gonna even make one. Like they had factories that burnt down. It's like specific issues that.
oh, I mean, factory burning down is different. Than
Yeah,
like not
no,
having,
but there
you know what I
are a
mean?
lot of them.
Yeah.
Sure.
We
Or
had
shut down
issues.
because they can't go in, because they're not allowed to go in for COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had issues too because a lot of our stuff, the long lead material is 18 to 24 months,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, you hit a glitch in that 18 to 24 months and suddenly it becomes 24 to 36 months.
Mhm.
We are, you know, creating 7 parts that go on a submarine with literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of parts.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be the one that makes the shipyard late. You know what I mean? It was tough. And then with the pricing going askew,
Oh,
our quotes were only
Yeah,
good.
that's.
Get this, our quotes for steel for like the next 8 years, right? Because we do it, you know, contract.
They won't.
They were guaranteeing them for 30 days. It takes 60 days for the Navy to approve the proposals.
And you gotta go get it requoted again. That's
Yeah,
what I'm having the
exactly.
same problem. We used
Oh,
to
it's
blank it
horrible.
out stainless steel for like a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
They won't sell it to us
No.
like that anymore.
because they don't know how much to charge.
Yeah, they're like, we'll give you the order, but it's subject to a
Yeah,
price increase.
It's like when you see in a menu, you know, market price.
Yeah,
That's sort of like
That's
what
what it
they're
is.
giving you for proposals.
Yeah, no, but someone's obviously benefiting.
Gotcha.
You know, like someone has to be benefiting from all of those issues, or else,
Somebody's making money.
like
somewhere,
Ashley
but-
Furniture, for instance, if they email me and they're like, "Oh, supply chain issue, you're not getting your couch for 6 months." Well, if they really wanted to get me my couch, probably in a week they could, but they've already gotten their money because I already paid for it up front. You know what I mean? That's the stuff that.
I'm not sure if they could have gotten to you. Well, they got somebody a couch last week.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, they can only make so
Yeah.
many of
Yeah,
them
it might
because
have
they only
been,
had
you
so
know,
many leg
75
stands
people
or
before
foam
that.
or whatever. Partly because it might be stuck in a container ship in Long Beach, California.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they could have air freighted it at a much higher cost potentially. They could have found, you know,
Yeah.
not her steel though.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just interesting
Right,
because
you're-
people have been saying the same thing for 3 years and no one's really done anything.
So but the answer,
Some things have
no,
gotten better.
but the answer is that, you know, Beck did benefit, right? So someone benefited.
That's what I mean. Someone's benefiting
But
always.
in his case, they were able to, but in some cases, there's no one that had excess inventory that wasn't lean or was operationally astute in things,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no one to,
Well, it's like Amazon's thriving.
or at least was.
Yeah, they were, but like throughout the pandemic, delivering things,
It's-
Prime and all that, like,
Yep.
Oh, their growth
That's
was
because of my
great.
wife.
yeah.
Oh, really? I thought it was me. Oh, good.
My wife's been supporting it.
Although they overproduce their warehouses and people in the long run probably, so
Yeah.
they're cutting back now too.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's trying to get it right, and you know, unfortunately, if you try to do things that are smart for business, like, hey, let's keep our powder dry, you know, let's drive in a little bit more inventory, then shareholders turn around and say you're irresponsible managers. So what do you do?
I think what we struggle with is balancing that overproduction. We are a lot of low volume stuff, high mix, low volume. So if we're setting up a job to run 6 pieces, well, why do that? Like we're gonna run 10 or 20.
Maybe.
Because then we don't have to worry about it for a few years, and it's not that difficult to put 5 pieces on the shelf. It's not that much space. If we were talking thousands, it would be, you know, different. But it saves you that setup time. But you need to balance that. Like that's how.
Well, it does, because it also limits your ability to make product changes.
Right, and that's what bites us all the time.
Well, the real short answer is, hang on a second, Howard. The real short answer is actually that what you have to do is you have to change the parameters around your break-even calculations. Like how many pieces should I make before I change over to something else? All right, there's calculations there. And the problem is with those assumptions, they assume that carrying costs and changeover times are the same, and they're not. Okay, so that's really what you end up doing is prioritizing being able to meet customer demand. Again, think about the clown with the golden arches. I mean, he can make some stuff ahead of time, but he can't make stuff an hour ahead. It's like 10 minutes at best. And so they really have to be able to react. Now, don't get me wrong. They know, like, okay, between 11:35 and 1, we're going to be busier, right? Because it's lunchtime, and so they can certainly ramp up a little bit to anticipate. But when we say overproduction, what we really mean is, okay, you know what? Howard's standing around because his machine's broken, or the job that we were waiting for him to do, he can't do for whatever reason. Die's busted. So you know what, Howard? Instead of you standing around, just go do something. Go run parts. That's really the big problem here. Just running things to keep people busy. Exactly.
Or this people before me keep on just piling up the inventory, and it's now going to be, I can't touch this inventory for 4 more days, and it's going to take me 4 months to get through it.
Oh, there's all sorts of things. So, I've told you earlier that commercial baking is one of the hardest things I know how to do. And I did some work for one of the bakeries in the city, and I don't want to, drop any names, but I think I can safely say they bake about as tasty a cake as you'll find anywhere. And so one of the problems that they were having was with icing on their butterscotch crimpets, right? And they were having trouble with icing sticking to the wrapper, not the cake. So we went in. This was actually with Mike Farabella, a guy I've known for years. We went through and looked at it and found that the guy who was in charge of making icing would make it in these big mixing bowls, right? Like I can't even get my arms around it, like 3 foot around. And he would make basically 1 an hour, or they used about 1 an hour, 1 mixing bowl per hour of icing. He would make all of them at the start of the shift, put them in the refrigerator, and then go walk around and screw around all night. Smoke cigarettes or, do whatever. And so the problem was the icing would sit in the refrigerator and get hard. Now, when the icing is hard, it's much more difficult to put onto the cake as it's being made, and it doesn't stick very well. So by putting in a pull system for icing and not letting the guy get more than 2 mixing bowls in the refrigerator at any time ever, we were able to, within 3 weeks, by the time we worked out the supply, we were able to eliminate the complaints of icing sticking to the wrapper and not the cake. Just by looking at the situation and putting in some controls that said, okay, we're only giving you space for 2 mixing bowls. You can't put in more than that. Guy didn't like it because he actually had to do his job throughout the night, but
I think also correct, the other
no worries.
the overproduction potential for you is the opportunity cost of what that, by changing over, you can make something else that the customer actually wants today.
And that's what we struggle with, because it is low volume, high mix.
Yeah.
You gotta run 2 or 3 things a day, but sometimes it's like, oh, well, if you would have left that running for 10 more minutes, we would have gotten 3 more parts.
There are times when that might make sense.
You couldn't possibly be, I think. It would be great if it was 1 piece flow, but with a, high mix that's that high, I don't know.
You'd be surprised. I'll tell you what. I've done quite a bit of work with machining, vertical and horizontal. And a lot of times, especially if you're running lights out or if you've got a number of tombstones, you got to run each one of them to check it. I mean, I've seen where a setup takes 6 hours and 4 of it was machine time just so that they could check the part. Yeah. Okay? At that point, what we learned from that, especially in a short-term situation, is don't set up both of these. Set up, operation 1, operation 2, but don't set up 2 op 1s. Don't set up 2 op 2s. Just because you have the space on your pallets, who cares? If you can't use them. I mean, I had one company, they would set up both sets of tombstones so that they could run some amount of lights out. And I was like, it's killing you. It was stupid. It was just dumb, right? But, you know, somebody told them something simple like, hey, running lights out means parts are cheaper. Well, if you do them the right way, they are. But if you don't need them, then they're more expensive. So anyway, stuff like that. The D itself stands for defects, right? It's easy to see why they're a waste after all. If we don't have time to make it right the first time, how will we find time to do it over again? Except for the fact that we always do. Yes?
Quick question. Why did you add P and leave off S? Traditionally,
You see TIMPWOOD's?
yeah.
Some people do. TIMPWOOD is what I use.
Would you consider P to be the same as S, like the skill?
S is skills, and here again, I don't love skills as a term because it sounds like, you know, you or Brett is nothing more than a project manager, and you know, that's it. That's all the skills I'm interested in. And that's not really it. It's teamwork. Skills is part of it. You know what? I'm so used to saying people.
Okay.
In
No,
fact-
I'm just curious.
In fact, you're going to laugh, but a long time ago, I developed TIMPWOOD as far as I know. Now, don't get me wrong, I worked for a company. I worked for a company that actually invented the term Lean Six Sigma. It was the George Group down in Dallas, Texas. From there, I learned about TIMPWOOD, right? They used 7 wastes. And then when I moved into the MEP system, we were recognizing 8 wastes. And it took me a while to figure out how to do it, and I came up with TIMPWOOD. Everybody's absorbed it. So it's the same. Now there's another one called downtime. You ever see this? I don't like it as much because it's like not, it's tortured, right? It's, what is it? The N is about people not valuing skills or some shit. I don't know. It kind of is, right? And I don't love it. So I don't love downtime. But TIMPWOOD works. And then we have somebody to blame, you know, when there are problems. Oh, yeah, well, TIMPWOOD's at it again. So just different ways to do it. This is actually a poster that I have. Well, we add some more logos and crap, and then it becomes a poster. But yeah, something like that. Anyway, just real quick, real high level again. Listen, this is just very, very, very high level. What we're trying to do no matter what is recognize there's a problem. And how do we do that? We look at financials. We look at production metrics, customer requests, goals of the organization. We understand there's the opportunity, if you will, okay? And then what we do is we really define all this stuff, determine our root causes, and then go and fix one issue at a time. So you'll hear, Rosa talks a lot about the human side of Lean. We talk a lot about cultures and teaming. You're going to hear us talk a lot about that. So what do you do when there's a situation, right? I mean, after all, maybe you're new to the department or new to the company. What do you do? 3 steps: stabilize, standardize, improve. Stabilize means do what you have to make sure that the customer doesn't feel the pain from your issues, right? And if that means that you need to throw labor at the problem or sort the warehouse 100%, go ahead and do it. Sucks, but you know, you don't want to save money and piss off the customer, not these days. So then, once you stop the bleeding, now work on the standardized piece, right? Make sure everybody does things the same way. And in fact, that's what that quote is. Without standards, or without standard work, there can be no Kaizen. Taiichi Ohno said that, said it often. So now, firefighting is sometimes necessary, but have you ever seen, especially sometimes with technical people, they're just so used to, you know, getting the call, okay, we got a problem in manufacturing, and they put on their superhero outfits and go out there, right? We don't want that. We want it to do this in a standard fashion. So that's really the point there. Now, we can talk more about this because I think this is going to help us a little bit. So when we get into the Six Sigma stuff, right, we talked about the DMAIC. Here are some of the key tools here, and we're going to go through each one of these in more detail. So I'm not too worried about that. But if you take a look, what are we trying to do? We're trying to define our problem statement and objective, right? We're trying to define our problem and what we want to do about it. Then what we do is we collect data on this. Here, I'm going to erase this and fill it up again. I think so. Just remember the no update meetings, okay?
Yes.
If you need ways to get rid of them, let me know. I will be happy to tell you more about them. But I think this becomes important here. All right, good. If we had more room, I would just flip the whiteboard over, but then I'd have 2 boards to erase later, so it's sort of easier to erase as I go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about domain. We mentioned this earlier, but basically when we look at the Six Sigma methodology, here's what we're looking at. So it's defined, right? And we really think in terms of problem statement and objective, but we also can define the team. We can define what's in scope, what's out of scope, right? So we're really defining what the problem is and what we expect to do. Now, when we get to the measure phase, this is sort of interesting because, right, so we're defining a scope. So with measure, we actually do 2 different things. One is there's the data piece, right? So we're collecting data. We do an MSA, Measurement Systems Analysis. You'll hear me talk more about that. And then we collect data for analysis. Okay, at the same time in the measure phase, we're also looking at processes. Okay, and so we will map them various ways to understand the flow and where value doesn't flow, right? But so 2 things, we're looking at data, we're looking at process. Okay, mapping the flow. So that then when we get to the analyze phase, what we can do here is we take a look at all this stuff, the data, the process investigation, plus our marching orders, and then we start trying to drive down to root cause. Right, so analyze is doing this, and this is where we create these models, right? The model to predict behavior. When I say behavior or performance, it's the same thing. Performance is probably a better word here. Let's try that one instead. Okay, so that's really what analyze is all about. Now, from here, remember, like I said, if you don't know what lean tool to use to solve your problem, use the define, measure, analyze front end, so you know what lean tool to use. And this is primarily lean tools here, so I just want to be clear about that. And then with control, right, we're trying to maintain the gains. Probably says that somewhere. Here, let's just write that down, maintain the gains. So that is really what we're trying to do here, and that's why all of these are in the order that they're in. Now, if we take a look at this, we actually, over here on the right, we have 2 different things that we're saying here. One is this idea of y equals f of x, which we already talked about. Here's the graphical version of that, right? The outputs, or the y, is what we want. Now, all too often, again, I've sat in plenty of these meetings, and they'll say, hey, we're behind in sales. Brett, what are you doing about sales? Adam, what are you doing to drive more sales out of your territory? And it's like, wait a minute. What do you want me to do? How about we figure out in this meeting how we're going to get the levels of business that we think we need? Right? All too often, it's like the meeting is just to beat on people until they do their job. Well, that's not really the goal or the role. So that's the idea here, though, again, the output that we're interested in is a function of the process and the inputs that go into that process. So the idea behind this in the Six Sigma world, let's figure out what the critical inputs are and let's control those. Okay? And so we'll talk more about what makes for a critical input. Now, what's interesting is, especially for folks who have been spending a lot of time in school, you know that like if you're getting a 90% overall in a course, that's considered an A, 80% a B. And so when we look at 99% or anything over 95%, we're like, well, that's pretty good. I love when inventory managers tell me, yeah, my inventory accuracy is over 95%. And it's like, okay, good. So only 5% of your parts are bad. And You don't know which ones they are. So sometimes you ship products that are okay and on time and whatnot, right? So that's the problem with 99%, because if you take a look at these factoids, what do they all have in common here? Unsafe drinking water is more than inconvenient, right? How about long or short landings? Again, beyond inconvenience, right? So really the short version is all of these come to health and safety. And you know what? Whether or not you have kids, I think you'll all understand that if the doctor were to say, hey, you want to give your kid a flu shot? Great. 95% chance that kid will be better after the shot than before the shot. Okay, so would you take the shot? After all, 19 out of 20 kids come out after that shot just fine. Glad they did it. Well, I don't really want to get graphic, but it's just a made-up example anyway. But let's just say it's less than ideal outcomes. Okay, so would you do it? When it comes to health and safety, 1 out of 20, not with my child. Frankly, no. And that's exactly right. So same thing. What's wrong with 99%? It's still not good enough in some circumstances. Okay. One of the things that you don't know about Six Sigma yet is that Six Sigma actually is a measure of process capability. Okay? And it equates to this idea of, we can go through some of the math later, but 3.4 defects per million opportunities. You'll hear this a lot. 3.4 DPMO, as you see here. Okay?
Your camera's not following.
Oh, it's not, darn it. See, the problem is, thanks, because the problem is that, there, see, now it's going to follow me. But, I wave my arms around and it thinks that I'm telling it not to, so thanks for that. All right, health and safety, yep. So listen, folks, I don't want you to get overwhelmed here. There are a lot of tools. We got a ton of tools. You want tools? We got tools, okay? You can see some of them here, maps. But the point is not the tool. It's not like, okay, it's time to do a cause and effect matrix. Check the box. Let's never worry about it again. No. The idea is the tools are here to show, to help. Because what happens, we see a problem. Howard, the customer, is complaining. Well, I don't know if he's for real or if he's full of shit or what's going on here. So we have to use data to figure out, is Howard just the kind of customer that we're trying to get away from, or does he really have a legitimate beef? By going through and using these tools, we can help answer that question. That's the point. So we got lots of tools, right? There's data-driven tools too, but again, they have certain purposes for us, and you guys are going to see and understand all of these. I love it. I really do. So let's talk about where the rubber meets the road. How about a typical project or two? Well, here's some, and they're different spaces, right? We tend to think of this stuff, Lean and Six Sigma, as being manufacturing. But look, HR in any organization, what are some of the things that we could do here? If you look at customer service, again, it doesn't say a word about manufacturing. It just says customer issues. Operational excellence, again, this could be in a warehouse. Same sort of thing, right? It's not about manufacturing. None of this stuff is. People think it is, but it's not. You can use Lean and Six Sigma tools any place that you're doing similar or the same things over and over again, right? Now, I know that, how many different kinds of drives do you make, Brett? Beck must brag about, oh, we got, gazillions.
Probably 12 families, but then within the families.
Sure, yeah, different materials, different requirements. Right.
Options, yeah.
Very similar though, right? They all come from the same place, but if you look up, based on the material and the service environment and, all that sort of stuff, the maintenance intervals, it'll change things. So it doesn't really matter though. The point is, it doesn't have to be about manufacturing. Look at all the stuff. These are just things that occur in any company. You could actually do the same things in a real estate office, right? They got the same issues, exactly the same issues. Any organization you can think of is going to have similar issues. So here's some stuff. This is getting a little older now. I'm going to have to work on this one a bit. But the idea is that here's some of the things that people can and have done. For instance, generic pharmaceuticals, and you can see some of the improvements there. We'll talk about some of these. Because in this one, this filler capability, liquids, creams, and ointments, right? So if you want to think about filling a tube of toothpaste, we could talk about that. And in this case, actually, they saved, this is actually several years ago, so it's worth even more now, but they saved $250,000 by not needing to buy a machine. It was budgeted, they were planning on buying it, and this project was sort of a last-ditch effort. And they were able to avoid spending $250,000. Yeah. Okay, yes, it was for the largest generic pharmaceutical company in the world, but still, even for them, $250,000 means something. So there's more tools here. You guys can see them, read them on your own. I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but basically the second half of this is all other stuff that we might talk about, but we're going to go through them all again anyway, so no need to worry about it. They're all just different tools. I've been talking about projects, and it's just overview. So this Lean versus Six Sigma, this DMAIC, that was sort of the important piece here. And Rose, I think I'm going to ask you to take another picture of it, if that would be okay. All right, folks, it's 10:30 now. So we've been at this for about 2.5 hours. A little early to take another break, but if you guys want to take 5 or get another cup of coffee or go to the bathroom or something, I can pull up my second presentation and we can go from there.
You want to see something funny? So your slide that you just had up, about 99%.
Right.
This is like the training that I'm giving today.
Oh, geez. Okay, there you
It's
go.
all the same
And it's all the same shit? Yeah. The same factoids.
I thought that was funny. I was like, wait, I've seen that slide before.
The very same factoids are used everywhere. Somebody made that slide a long time ago and just. Well, you know what? Actually, in fact, she's wearing her coat.
I had to change. Into
Okay.
this.
All right. Let me take a look at the thermostat then.
Don't base it off of me.
No. That's fine. No.
I was prepared with a cardigan, that didn't work.
Well, let's see what we can do here. Oh yeah. So that's what happened. So I've got it set.
Yeah, it's, the file was called
It was in the email.
I got it from the, yeah, it was in the email he sent.
No, it's not in the thumb drives. No. So the thumb drives is supporting documents. It's the material that's separate.
Bring that 5 minutes, boss?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. You know what's funny?
What's that?
I actually went upstairs before when I was taking a phone call and I put on my wool socks. My toes are still cold.
Oh,
That's
geez.
why I mentioned it. Did you see my flowers, Howard? Come here.
No, it says 68 degrees right there, I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's wrong. It's 2 degrees
Those
off where
are
it should
from
be.
Our garden in the backyard.
Oh, wow.
Aren't they so pretty?
Alexa, play notifications.
During the day, like
Yeah, sure. It's right there. Door on the left. No, we just keep it closed because it's just awkward. Yeah, it's like that. We'll have to get Rosa to call soon. I'll have to give her my credit card. So I promise it'll be hopefully less talking and more doing. How are we doing so far, guys, though? Is this helping or? We're going to get more into the, don't worry, one of the things we were working on was freeing up some wall space so that you guys can work on projects and apply some of these tools to them. So.
I will say I did a quick Google of the top 3 supply chain companies, and their stocks are all up.
Are they now?
20-something% in the past 3 years. UPS is up 69%.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Amazon's another one.
Oh yeah, but like Cisco and all of them, they're all. That's why I'm just saying it's funny for companies that are like, we're having issues, but it's like, well, all those.
It's a trickle down thing. Like people who deal a lot with raw materials, they are
Right,
having real issues.
they're having the issues, yeah. But like,
But then there are people that buy their stuff and saying, well, we can't get it.
yeah.
Oh, you probably know better than many, Brett, how many layers deep the supply chains go.
Well, what drives me nuts is we are not adjusting our lead time. We have a 6-week lead time no matter what. No matter what. We had a record business year last year. Still 6-week lead time.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what our issues are, no matter how busy we are, our people are telling us all the time, hey, we can't get anything. It's 6 to 12 weeks at a minimum. And we're okay with that. We understand. Like, why can't we tell the same thing to our customers that, hey, you gotta, but nobody has an app.
Nobody knows got the balls to do that. Let's face it.
Nobody wants to make that proposal.
Yeah, I understand that one. Alexa, play songs from Keiko Matsui in Great Room. Alexa, play songs from Keiko Matsui in Great Room. I've got a list of, the problem when you have unlimited music available, my problem is I never know who I want to listen to. It's like I could listen to anything, I don't listen to anything. I've got a list now of probably 30, 40, 50 artists. Oh, they're a good one, let's write them. I just added one yesterday, it was jazz, it was Dr. Lonnie Smith. Never heard of him before. But I'm trying to type up my list so that we don't listen to the same things over and over again. I'm trying.